So I had, so I figured, well, that's
Hey, Evan, we're going to get started here now.
I don't want to get started.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being so accommodating. I ran into a few technical difficulties, but thank you for your patience. I'm glad we could get this set up. I want to welcome you to our very first Google Hangout. I want to thank you guys for coming, and we hope that this face-to-face discussion gives you guys an opportunity to share your thoughts on Evan's 10 information security predictions for 2018, as well as answer any questions that you guys may have had about the predictions or information security in general. Evan's going to start with an overview of his 10 information security predictions in case you didn't have a chance to read the blog post, and then after that, we're going to open it up for Q&A. When you're submitting your questions, please do not just call out your questions or talk over Evan. We want to maintain organization and give everybody a chance to have their questions answered. So if you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat button that'll open up a chat box on the right side of your window. And then you can enter in your question in the type message where everyone will see it. And then we'll call on you as we get going. This is to make sure that we don't repeat questions and then give everyone a chance to, air their thoughts. This Hangout's scheduled to go for 1 hour, so we're going to be done at 3, but we'll push that back to 3:15. It might go longer depending on Q&A and how the discussion goes. We're really excited about this and hope you enjoy it as well. Once this is done, we're going to send up a follow-up email to all of you just to give you a chance to give us some feedback and then give us any questions that may not have been answered. And then this audio and visual will be recorded, just so you guys know, and then will be published on our website and sent out as well, so you can watch it and review the questions. All that being said, I'd like to turn it over to FRSecure CEO and Founder, Evan Francen.
Thank you, Ethan. I'm going to start my video. Not nearly as good looking as you are, Ethan, but I'll do my best. So yeah, this is meant to be face-to-face. So really, if you have questions, type them in the group chat. I'm hoping to address all questions. So type away. Again, down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a chat window. If you just wanted to send the chat only to me, not to everyone, you can choose a drop down when you open the chat window. There's a drop down there that says to everyone, and you can just choose me, and only I'll see it. So if there's questions that you're maybe embarrassed, some of us security people can be intimidating sometimes. I was telling Drew, I have some people.
Did you know he's on Zoom now? He's on a different video chat. There's a link in your email that'll show you how to get to a different video chat. It's called Zoom.
Ethan, if you're still listening, you can.
Hey, when you guys join the video, please mute yourselves, just so we don't have people trying to talk over Evan. And then once you enter in your question into the chat bot, we'll call on you, unmute yourself, ask your question, and then remute yourself. This will give Evan the floor, so to speak, and avoid any sort of talking over, and ensure that it's a free, well-organized Zoom meeting. Thank you.
Ethan, I think you or Andy too can control meeting people. I'm not the host.
Okay.
So anyway, I was telling you a story. I was telling you a story about forgetting my power cord when I went to Mexico to write a book that I'm working on, and there's a lot more to that story. I also became part of a coffee club, 70-year-old men that retire down there. That was another good story. All right, so I guess the purpose for us talking today is to talk about the information security predictions for 2018 that I wrote a few weeks ago. It's January still. So we can talk about any of those. If you've had a chance to read those, those are available online from FRSecure's website. And I write so much. I mean, you kind of get so caught up with everything that's going on. It seems like things move so fast. And preparing for this, I actually forgot what I had predicted. So I had to print it out. So I've got to print it out here for reference on what I predicted for 2018. The first thing that I predicted in I first gave it a little recap on what happened in 2017. 2017 was another chaotic year for information security for us, certainly. Chaotic, it all depends on perspective. I guess if you, from a business perspective, it was chaotic in maybe a good way. For the industry, information security in general, I think it was chaotic in a not so good way. Obviously, when things happen, when there's confusion in the industry, when people do fall victim to breaches or have compliance needs or whatever the case might be, that ends up being a good thing for business, but not necessarily a good thing for the people we work with. So it's always kind of a glass half full, glass half empty kind of thing. So 2017, really, if you've been in this industry a while, 2017 wasn't all that unlike 2016 or 15 or 14 or even going back to the 90s. It was just different things, right? Every year there's kind of a slew of newer, confusing things that kind of happen in our industry. So I started off with the 2017 recap. Obviously, we had shadow brokers and their release of alleged release of some NSA tools, including Internal Blue, WannaCry, Equifax breach. That was the big thing last year. The reason why we exist here at FRSecure is to fix the broken industry, right? And so the industry itself obviously is big, it's complex, a lot of moving parts, but it's also made up of all these parts. So every project we do, every customer we work with, everything, we ask ourselves the question, are we contributing to a fix or contributing to the brokenness of our industry? The Equifax breach in particular was troublesome for me personally, because I do take a lot of this personally. I don't like hate, maybe is a word, people getting taken advantage of or cheating. So when you look at something like the Equifax breach, it's just it's bad for all of us because we all suffer from the breach. You can debate, did Equifax do all the things they should have done in terms of prevention? Did they detect the breach early enough? Obviously, we've seen their response. That's what we saw that was public. The response was probably the worst response I think I've ever seen. So it was bad. But then we're all left, right, with all of our social security numbers, names, addresses, personal information that's been, again, compromised. I guess you can assume at this point, if you are a U.S. citizen, that your information has been breached in one of the many, many thousands of breaches that have occurred. And where I bring this kind of full circle is one of the things at the end of our predictions. I mentioned that we here want to work on a bill, which, a bill becoming a law. I don't know if you remember Saturday mornings. Do you remember that? And they had the bill on Capitol Hill thing. Yeah, that's what I think of. I've never written a bill before. I've never written a law before. But we have engaged, people that we know. I know Jim Nash is, my state representative. And he has, obviously some experience with how bills work and laws work. And so starting with him, and essentially we want to make, I guess if we were to summarize what the bill should say, the bill would say, in the simplest terms, make it legal to use a social security number without accompanying authentication. The authentication is something that the identity holder or owner controls. So that way, when an Equifax happens, when my social security number is out there, it's really nothing more than a name. It's worthless without the authenticator. So there's a lot more complexity to that law. But get the gist of it. So anyway, the 2017 recap, the Equifax breach was one of the things I think that kind of stuck out for me as being something that sort of ticked me off last year because the fix is there. It's just whether or not we're going to do it, right? Whether or not we're going to implement the fix. It'll be work, just like everything in what we do is work. It doesn't mean we don't do it. So there's that. The deep analytics breach, some of you may not even have heard of that one, but that one was early on. 198 million records. The Yahoo breach, that's the big one. We're blaming Russia for that one. That's kind of that's in vogue, I think, to blame nation-state actors. So Russia, North Korea, Iraq, whoever we can blame. We have this thing that we play. We play it every time there's a breach. We play the blame game. So in Yahoo, we're blaming Russia. Uber, that was interesting, obviously. And current management blames old management. You can certainly see how that is probably true. But anyway, it was big news last year. Kaspersky Lab was another big thing. We had a lot of customers who were using Kaspersky for antivirus and anti-malware. The government, because Kaspersky is located in Moscow. And anyway, there were a lot more things to that breach too, because there was an infiltration by, I think, Israel, the Israeli hackers, and found actual evidence that Russian agents had actually been in Kaspersky as well. So there's maybe some things to that. But anyway, the end result of that is Kaspersky products are forbidden on U.S. government systems. So that's a big deal, and that hurts them. Obviously, if you follow the industry, if you look at the industry, I mean, there were many things beyond just my 2017 recap there. I'll look to ahead in 2018 with big news. The big one, and the first one, it's no accident, it's the first one in the predictions, is GDPR. GDPR is going to be a big deal. There aren't enough companies taking it seriously enough, but the reach is really broad. If you essentially interact with, to simplify, if you interact with any personal data that belongs to somebody who lives in the EU or is from the EU, that law applies to you. The fines are stiff. Implementation is this May. Yeah, and it's not terribly difficult to comply with the regulation. There's a lot of formalization to it. You do need to have a data protection officer, but that can be a virtual data protection officer. So that doesn't mean you need to hire a full-time person to be a data protection officer. You can outsource it and make it a virtual data protection officer. That's kind of some of the work that we do. You can also have it be a part-time job. There just needs to be somebody named that. So the first question, M. Scully, I think. We need to get that person a prize.
Yeah, let's let him ask it himself. So
face to face. What if he doesn't want to get on the camera?
He's already on camera.
Yep, got my camera on. Hey guys. Yeah, I'm just wondering, is the GDPR going to become the de facto kind of denominator for companies to meet with respect to targets?
Yeah, I think it depends on the company. A lot of the companies we work with are small to medium size. I mean, our sweet spot is probably 50 to maybe 5,000 employees. We do have customers that far exceed that, but a lot of those companies don't have any, personal information that belongs to somebody from the EU. So they're not even concerned about it. I think it'll be business as usual for them. But I do think that GDPR will set a standard globally for the protection and privacy of personal information. So I do think it will become much more widespread. Good question. Good to see you again, too. Anyway, so GDPR, that's a big one. I also then went on to, 2018, I think what we're going to see with GDPR is right out of the gate. I mean, how does GDPR compare to ISO 27002? Completely different. ISO 27002 is management practices. They are more prescriptive. It's an information security standard. GDPR is really more about privacy. And so when you think about what information security is, and I use this definition over and over and over again, it's the application of administrative, physical, and technical controls to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. That's information security. ISO would be more about that, whereas privacy is really about the protection of confidentiality of one specific type of information. So you would fit GDPR compliance within a framework like ISO 27002 versus the other way around. So that's how they compare. It's a subset. A good question. I like questions. So as long as they're not really, really hard ones. You guys can keep the hard ones for later. We can bring in some pen testers to talk about that stuff. All right, so 2018, I think out of the gate, we're going to see, I'd be really surprised if we didn't see some really significant fines this year around GDPR, because I do think that the EU wants to set a precedent that they are going to take this very seriously. That's why this has become so newsworthy. That's why you've heard about it so much lately. I think it's all just part of the marketing of, they really are going to take this seriously. So if you're not sure whether or not GDPR applies to you, get sure. There's a lot of good guidance. We have a cheat sheet that we developed that you're more than welcome to download off our website. The UK has a really good, the Information Commissioner's Office has a really, really nice write-up. It's a 12-step kind of checklist for GDPR. That's another good resource to go look at. But I would say if you haven't already made sure that GDPR does or does not apply to you, do that now. Because you have until basically May before that becomes effective. Not that you're going to have an auditor knocking on your door June 1st, but be ready. So the second thing, so I think GDPR is revolutionary. That's kind of a big, not revolutionary, very, very significant. It's one that we haven't seen for a while. Number two is ransomware attacks. And you can kind of, if you can get into the mind a little bit of attackers, there's a great return on investment with ransomware. So ransomware will continue to be very significant this year. I did include a graph in my predictions where I said, in 2015, approximately $24 million globally was spent on ransomware payments. 2016, $850 million, and in 2017, the estimation was about $5 billion. And in preparation just for this, I was like, man, I didn't even include my source of where I got that information, because then when I see a trend like that, it is extraordinary. So I'd be like, well, okay, where'd you get your data? And so I did find where I got that data. That was from Cybersecurity Ventures, which is sort of a credible place, but at least it's not me. So that's where it comes from. So I would expect that trend to continue to rise. I also expect more sophistication in ransomware, meaning the traditional method for ransomware would be to encrypt your data, hold it ransom, pay me the ransom, and I'll give you the key to decrypt your data. So I hold that data ransom. I think now that people are getting better at backups, right? And people have focused a lot of time in the last 12 to 18 months on making sure that their backups are restorable and all that good stuff. So then I wouldn't pay the ransom. Well, then all I need to do from the attacker's perspective is just take your data, exfiltrate your data, and hold it ransom that way. So even if you did restore your data, I'm still going to hold your data ransom and threaten to release it, right? And that's not anything new, I think, but you'll see that happen more often. You're also seeing in ransomware, we're seeing cyber insurance companies advising clients to pay ransoms. So that doesn't help any of us. It helps, I guess, in that one instance, but it doesn't help the industry very much. We also, I think I just read recently, there was this happens often, right? So it's not, but it was just one news story I happened to read recently. $55,000. I think there was a hospital somewhere paid $55,000 for their ransom, even though they had backups. They just said that the backups would take too long to restore, so they paid the ransom anyway. And so I thought, well, okay, that doesn't help us much. Other things I think we'll see with ransomware is I do think we'll see a lot more fileless ransomware, meaning that ransomware runs in memory. It won't run as files, so it'll be more difficult to detect potentially, and more difficult to identify the source. Right. So when a ransomware outbreak happens in the incident response, it's okay. Where is this coming from? In some cases, you just shut down all the machines. If you are shutting down all the machines and the thing is just running in memory, you've just potentially destroyed the evidence to find the original source too. So I do expect, kind of more sophistication in ransomware. That water, I'm trying to use a good analogy, that water trough hasn't run dry yet. You saw a big shift a few years ago from PCI or credit card, debit card data breaches. You don't read about those much anymore because now people are going to chip and pin. The return on investment, there's still a return. It's just not as significant as ransomware. So that's why you've seen the focus, shift, I think, to ransomware. Does it take time to decrypt too, though? Yes, it does. It does take time to decrypt. In this particular case, the hospital said it would take days or even weeks to potentially restore from backup. I can't remember the number of files they said that were actually encrypted, but it was in the tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands. And so I thought, my first thought was, access control obviously is a limiting factor for ransomware. Because if my system is, if I'm the one who fell for the ransomware attack and started encrypting, then it would work under the context of my username and password. So whatever I have access to is potentially exposed to the ransomware. So the number of files that this one particular system or set of systems attacked is one thing. But the fact that it takes so long for you to restore tens of thousands of files, if it takes you days or weeks, then you kind of question the value in the backup anyway, right? I mean, the whole disaster recovery process, determining what your recovery time objectives are and recovery point objectives and those kinds of things, going through those exercises, it shouldn't take days or weeks, and you shouldn't pay the damn ransom. Oh, I said damn. Right? But no moderator. Well, they're listening, but they're not doing anything. All right, so ransomware was number 2. I think, again, it will continue. It'll be more significant and more sophisticated. A lot of these predictions, you really don't go out too much on a limb on these predictions, right? I mean, ransomware is going to increase. Surprise, surprise. Which one gives you your information security superpowers, the glasses or the beard? Both of them. It's a combination, man. Right? Yeah, it takes a lot of work to be this good at security. Have you seen different flavors of ransomware that are more malicious than others? At one time, there was a variant that encrypted the boot sectors of drives and ran. Yes, there are all kinds of different flavors of ransomware. There are ransomware variants that will prevent it'll basically brick your machine. So it does encrypt the boot sector. We did it's not uncommon for us to do some demonstrations of various ransomware variants. And yeah, one of those variants definitely, I can't remember the name, but there's tons of different variants. They work in different ways. So definitely boot sector is one. IoT attacks will get nasty. So last year we kind of saw our first, really they were more focused on distributed denial of service attacks, where IoT systems with default usernames and passwords were compromised and then used almost as a bot army to then attack other systems. It doesn't take too many, really, to saturate links. So that was fairly common this year. I think it's going to get different. That attack, the vector itself, right, compromising the system or compromising the IoT device, that still exists. That has not gone away. People haven't started changing. Maybe they have, but it's such a trickle of the entire population of IoT devices. The same attack vector, the same vulnerability is still there in these systems. So you would expect more of those types of attacks, and I would also expect some of these IoT devices to be held ransom. So if you want your baby monitor back, or you want your refrigerator back, pay me $50 or something. I think you'll see a lot more because the money's there. So that's called cyber hijacking, and I think it'll become a lot more mainstream in 2018. We didn't see much of that in 2017. Not that it didn't happen; it just didn't gain widespread attention like the DDoS stuff did. But I think you'll see it gain a lot more attention this year. It's funny. I think so many people don't even know that they have IoT, which is really surprising. When you look at kind of all the best practices on the internet for securing IoT, it should start with number 1. Make sure you have or don't have IoT. I think sometimes you go to the electronics store and you buy something, bring it home, and you may not even recognize or realize that you just connected something up to the internet. Recovery keys are only reliable when they take over command and control. Oh, recovery keys, like if you purchased it, okay, so in ransomware, if I pay the ransom, the recovery keys are almost always reliable. They almost always work because that's part of the money-making machine, right? Because if I knew or I got out that if you pay ransoms, I'm not going to give you your keys, well, then people are going to stop paying ransoms, right? And they'll just say, consider the data lost or restore from backup. So part of the whole allure of ransomware is that I give you a reliable key to decrypt your data. So most of them, I have seen some that haven't, but it's pretty rare. There have been some, in history, there have been some takedowns of command and control systems where they've actually, Microsoft or Cisco or somebody has actually gotten the keys and then released those. It's happened, a handful of times. Configure or TDSS. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff coming with that, too. It's a good point, Royce. All right, so IoT. We know what to expect with IoT. 4, financial fraud attacks through partners. This is such a simple attack. Again, great return on investment. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. So phishing attacks, the first phishing attack, it all starts with a human compromise. It all starts with the phishing attacks. I mean, those are still so successful, right? I mean, it's a great return. The first phishing attack I ever saw was in 1998. It was an eBay phishing attack. And I remember I was working at Jask Software. We made PaintShop Pro. And I thought, wow, this is a novel idea. I mean, it's the first time I ever saw one. I was like, this is going to be big. Well, here we are, 20 years later, right? It's 2018 now. Still, right? Still happening. And you can't, people are people. Yeah, Joe, you remember that. So it starts, this type of an attack usually starts this way, right? It's compromise one of your vendors. It's compromise, the target attack started this way too. Compromise one of your vendors and then use that vendor then to attack the eventual target, no pun intended. But in this way, the target is having you send me money fraudulently, whether it be through an ACH transfer, a wire transfer, whatever. So exploit in this case, exploit a supplier. Somebody who regularly sends invoices. Right? Attack that. Once you've got usernames and passwords, and you've got a foothold into the system, determining where emails are going and how they're going and what's being said is really simple, especially if I've got single-factor authentication set up on like Office 365 or OWA. Use then those, that intelligence that you've gathered then to create an email to the actual target of the fraud and say something like, hey, we're changing the way we're collecting payments now. We're no longer collecting payments through paper checks. We're now collecting payments through ACH transfers or wire transfers only. What do I need to do in order for you to process this change on your end? And usually there's some process. It's forms, maybe a call, whatever. It doesn't really matter, but you follow that process and then you start sending invoices. And when you follow that process, the accounts that I'm having you put the money in are my accounts, right? They're the fraudsters' accounts, and then you start sending invoices, and then people start sending money. That's such an easy attack. We've seen huge increases over the last 3-4 years. We'll see more increases because people still haven't caught up to it. From a law enforcement perspective, they're as inundated as everybody else. I doubt you're going to get any, unless it's something really catastrophic, I doubt you're going to get any traction with them. So you're sort of stuck. Yeah, so that's bad. 5, lack of qualified security expertise. Problems get worse. Outsourcing security services will grow. We've been at a 0% unemployment rate in this industry for a while now. That will continue. There are, I think there's 3 things that make a really good security person. One is ethics. You just have to be above board, be a trustworthy, dependable person. And, things that you can't teach people. The second thing that you need is education. You do have to be book smart. You do have to stay up with kind of what's going on. And the third thing, that you really can't speed up is this experience. There's certain things that you learn over the years that you really can't learn any other way other than having to do it, other than having to live through it. And one of the challenges we're going to have, and we already do have, is if the unemployment rate is at 0%, that means there's going to have to be some influx of new people into our industry. People that they may be super smart, right? They may have their master's degrees in information security. They may have read every book known to man about information security. Well, the one thing that they're going to lack, which I don't think you should underestimate, is experience. So that's going to be a big challenge. It already is a challenge, but I think the problem compounds, gets worse. So expect more of that. I've seen pay now. I saw a job posting, and I kind of don't want to tell our unicorns that work here because I don't want them getting any ideas. But there was a job posting for some. It was an information security consultant, basically. I mean, somebody with some experience, and the pay was $350,000 to $500,000 a year, with equity, with bonus, and full benefits. I'm like, holy crap! Who can afford that kind of person, right? I mean, whatever. I'm not going anywhere. I still work here, and I don't get paid that much, but whatever. But that just tells you, I mean, there's some desperation on the street for good, solid information security people. And when you hire one, I mean, how do you know if you're hiring a good one, right? I mean, it's so easy to BS people into having them think that, man, I know a lot about security. I can talk a good game. I'm pretty good at this and stuff. So all those are problems. So I think significant growth areas I'm hoping that we'll see in 2018 is outsourced information security services, a vCISO type of service. And I would suggest if you're going to engage a vCISO, hold them accountable to something. Don't just pay hours for something. If you want to get value out of a vCISO, give them specific tasks to work from and hold them accountable for those tasks. There's a lot of other things around vCISO that I think we need to look for. We are experiencing a very fast growth in our own vCISO services here at FRSecure. And I expect that to continue. There's a lot of work to be done in that. Because people can't afford $300,000 to $500,000, right? And you wouldn't need that anyway. I think most organizations, need part-time vCISO or CISO help. Anyway, what's your outlook for InfoSec? That's not the right thing. InfoSec Freelancers. Good. My outlook is good for freelancers. I think the thing you really help when you have those three things. You have the experience, the book smarts, and obviously the ethics. I think that's what makes you also a good freelancer. So, Joe, leveraging your years of experience with what you've done, at your employer. And I know you and I have worked together, not recently, but a while back. I know some of the experience you have that would help a lot of people. I think another thing I'd like to see a lot more of, so that some of this is wishful thinking, I think for in 2018, we're certainly going to do it here, is free information security training and certification classes. We've been doing the CISSP mentor program here since 2010. We started with 6 students. 2010, we had $258,000 in total revenue back then. Last year, we had 160 students. We do take pride in that because we really feel like we're helping fix the broken industry when we train more people. The CISSP mentor program, the way it works is we teach you what you need to know to pass the exam. But then we also take some of our experience and try to share some of the things that we really encounter every year or throughout, I guess, our entire career. We're hoping for 300 students this year. I'd like to see a lot more organizations do this same type of thing. And I think you'll start to see that because it's one of the things that will help fix the 0% unemployment rate. in our industry. We just need more good security people. So anybody who's listening or paying attention in this, it's not a Hangout anymore. It's like a Zoom out now. But if you're in the Zoom out and you're interested, you're welcome. There's no experience necessary. You just need to pay for your book. And then if you do want to take the exam, you have to pay the $6.8 million for that. No, I'm just kidding. It's like $400, $500. Too much. You know that for just an exam. All right, so that's number 5. Number 6, cryptocurrency chaos. Oh, this is like all the news, right? Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and all the like. Last year, I think most of us, many of us, hadn't even heard of cryptocurrency before last year. Cryptocurrency, really gained in popularity, kind of with an underground sort of crowd because it was an anonymous way to send money. It was not trackable, right, because of the distributed ledger system and all that. So that's where it originally kind of gained in popularity, and then people started using it for other types of payments, and still people really struggle with normal people. And I say normal people are anybody who's like not me. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not normal. But you guys, most of you guys are all normal people. It's still confusing to many people. I think mainstream, it's confusing. And man, we saw a wild ride so far with Bitcoin. And I think that wild ride will continue. You also see a lot more attacks. And if you just think this through, cryptocurrency is where the money's at. And where the money's at, the attackers will be at also. So, and there are significant vulnerabilities, not in the Bitcoin technology itself or cryptocurrency technology itself, but in its implementation. So for instance, I have a Bitcoin wallet, or I have a cryptocurrency wallet where I'm keeping Bitcoin. My authentication to that wallet, if I choose poor authentication, in some cases, just nothing more than a username and password. If I chose a weak one and somebody else took that and stole my Bitcoin, there's no recourse. I do not get that money back. It's impossible to get that money back. So it's gone forever. That's just one of many risks. So the security of my wallet, right, is the security of my money. I'm also reliant on these Bitcoin exchanges, right? In some respects, their security also affects kind of the entire system. And you'll see a lot more attacks of that, right? So it's not the technology itself. It'll be the implementation of the technology that we'll see more attacks. We'll see there have been, successful attacks already on cryptocurrency exchanges. There have been successful attacks on wallets already. Expect a lot more of that. It's funny. And then the second thing I think we'll see is certainly a lot of price volatility. You're already seeing that this year. It peaked crypto, like Bitcoin itself started, what did it get up to? It's 287 in 2015 to 19,000 in December. And I think last I saw it had dipped down to 10 something. So it's even sliced in half, and then you'll go back up again. And if you've kind of watched other markets, this isn't any different than what was the first kind of bubble that ever burst? Wasn't it like the tulip market? You don't know what I'm talking about, do you? Anyway, there was a tulip market. I think that was the first kind of bubble. There was such wild speculation around the price of tulips back in the hundreds or something. But there was such wild speculation that people were dumping everything they owned into buying futures of tulips. Well, that crashed. That was kind of the first bubble burst. We've seen so many bubble bursts over the years, and I think cryptocurrency isn't going to be all that much unlike that. So there's that. So price volatility, attacks, price volatility, and then I think the next one is regulation. Anytime there is this much volatility and this much money being made and this much money being lost, governments want to get involved. So I do think we'll see regulation. There's already been some attempts at that. I think it was South Korea has already announced some form of potential regulation around cryptocurrency. I would expect more of that. The thing is that there are going to be real people behind all these attacks. There are real people who suffer. So if I bought into the hype of cryptocurrency and I bought, say at 12,000, I want to ride this wave. That's one thing. But let's say I mortgaged my house and I took kind of all of my assets and dumped them into cryptocurrency, and for some reason, somehow I either locked myself out of my wallet, right? So I can no longer authenticate to my wallet, or my authentication with my wallet has been compromised. Now I've lost everything and there's no recourse. There will be stories of that if there aren't already. Just logic would tell you that that's going to happen. Yeah, so that's Bitcoin. I don't think I have any other stuff that I covered really on Bitcoin. That was number 6. I think it seemed like I had one more thing to say about Bitcoin. It's a quiet crowd. You guys can type in questions if you want. What did there was something else about Bitcoin. Oh, the difference, right? So in banking, right? When I put my money in banking, high risk, high reward, right? Did you know I was a stockbroker once? You did know that? Did I tell you that? How did you know? Who told you?
John.
John told you. All right, yeah, way back when. I was still in college. But we always taught this risk reward, because one of the things in stocks is if I suggest that you make an investment that doesn't fit with your profile, that could be a bad thing, right, for everybody. And I think one of the things with Bitcoin is you don't have that kind of same checks and balances, right? So I could, be so enamored with the potential gains, that I just don't take reasonable steps to protect myself. So that's kind of scary for me. Not for me, but for other people that I fear for. Plenty of people who bought Bitcoin 2 or 3 years ago have yep. And that's it. So the other thing is if I put money in a bank, right? Banks are at least if somebody steals all my money out of my bank account, I'm protected by Regulation E, which essentially I think limits my liability to $50, right? And a lot of times the banks give that back to you too. So, some benefits to using banks. 7 was cyber insurance. SME market will explode. This is a funny market, the cyber insurance market. I don't know if you shopped for cyber insurance a few years ago, but you never knew what you were getting. Premiums were all over the board. Coverage was all over the board. You really never knew if you were even protected against a loss, against a breach. That's settled quite a bit. And even just yesterday, I was talking with one of our clients who's thinking about getting cyber insurance, and I think the coverage was $3 million, and a bunch of other stuff in there. And the premium was $29,000 annual, right? $2,500. It's not terrible. Whereas before you'd find different, there was so much difference. So the reason why I think a lot of those things happened is there's no good actuarial data for the small to medium-sized businesses because they don't result in huge losses, huge regulatory fines, huge lawsuits. A lot of times they don't even get reported. Sometimes, we've seen small businesses get put out of business and nobody really knew the details of what happened. Whereas in the large markets, jumbo insurance, there are a lot of loss. There is a lot of loss data, right? The targets, even Equifax, Home Depot, Dairy Queen, those bigger breaches, there's good loss data available, so they can kind of the actuaries can figure out good rates. So there's always, not always, but that part of the market sort of stabilized before the SME market. But now we're starting to see the SME market stabilize. And so I think you'll see an explosion in the SME. I'm not an insurance guy, but all indications are that the SME market will explode for cyber insurance. One, because it's starting to solidify. They're starting to get some consistency across policies, and small to medium-sized businesses can now actually afford good coverage. So all that stuff is kind of playing itself together. I made some kind of wild predictions in terms of 34 to 38% of the total. I don't know, maybe. But that was my 7th. So has FRSecure seen any cryptocurrency targeting attacks? Yes. Yep. And there's actually malware now that will use your system as for Bitcoin mining without you knowing. So we'll use CPU cycles for that. And you won't know necessarily. That's another common. It's becoming more common. Are you seeing any trends in what your clients are doing to better address their InfoSec management? Hire gooder people at it. No. Yes. Information security management, the trend is less people, it's not fast enough, but less people are treating it like it's an IT issue and more people are treating it like it's a business issue. So you are seeing more discussion with executives. Again, it's not fast enough. The trend has been slow, but I can remember, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it would be unheard of to have, if you got invited to a board meeting to talk about information security, somebody was smoking something they shouldn't have been smoking. It just didn't happen. But now that's happening more often. So it is being treated like it's more of a business issue, which is a very positive trend, I think, in our industry. Once you get executive management kind of understanding information security and speaking the same language as you are, then they invest, and they invest wisely. So according to AM Best, last year the cyber market reported losses of 47%. So it was overall profitable. There are now 130 plus carriers offering coverage. Yep. All right. So that was, what number was that? Was that 8? Not only one. Oh no, that was 7. 8 attacks on U.S. government and critical infrastructure. Those have always been happening, and I think it's inevitable. So take our power grid, for instance. That would be a bad thing to hit in the United States. All right. Thanks, Joe. Take care. It's a very distributed infrastructure, but there's been enough probing types of attacks, and I used an example of what happened in the Ukraine, where Russia was kind of just probing around and then eventually did, I think, more significant attacks. You see the same thing happen in the United States. It doesn't, just the probing. So that's concerning. I think you don't see much in the news today in terms of actual attacks taking certain utilities offline so much, but I think you'll see that in 2018. You'll see some utilities taken offline in 2018. And I think the purpose is to continue to build this attack profile for a larger scale, wider scale attack. And I mentioned, there was a concerning quote that I cited in What to Expect in 2017 from Andy Greenberg, who works for Wired magazine. And he said, all the most powerful nations in the world, US, Russia, China, probably have the ability to take down each other's power grids and infrastructure, but the scary thing is that Russia is brazen enough to actually do these things. And that's true. So I don't like that. But I do think, so I think we'll see more of that this year. I think we'll see some utilities go offline, and it'll be the result of an attack. But I think that attack isn't the attack. It's probing attacks. A breach, so 9 I don't like at all, but I do think it's only a matter of time. It seems to be inevitable, and I don't know if it's this year or if it's next year, but a breach will occur that will result in a loss of life, a direct loss of life, because we're now connecting people up to the internet more than we ever have. And that's concerning, because like most things in technology, we overemphasize convenience, we overemphasize ease of use and whiz-bang things, and information security is an afterthought. Even on the regulatory side of these things, like the FDA, they don't know security any better than most of us. So I think that's concerning to me, that medical implants now, we have a customer who does medical implants, and or a medical implant that helps people. I can't really tell you all the stuff, because then you'll know who it is. But it's concerning. I don't know if I'd want that in my body, knowing that it's going to be connected to the internet, and whether it's a VPN or whatever type of implementation you've made, to call back to the hospital and a doctor, right, to collect this data so that when I go in and visit the doctor, he's got all the data right there, and he doesn't have to ask me how I feel or how I did. He's got all the data there to diagnose right there. That's concerning. And I can't think of a better way to do, if I were a bad person, to do ransomware, right? If I hold your medical device as ransom, pay the ransom, or say goodbye, that's a big deal. So logic would tell you that those things are coming. We already know that people can hack into cars. We already know that people can hack into airplanes. It's only a matter of time. So I'm really hoping that one doesn't happen this year, but it seems like it has to. At what point do you get kind of reach critical mass and one of these things happens? So if not this year, eventually, and hopefully it'll get people's attention more, and we'll start taking this even more seriously than we do today. Number 10 is new law protecting U.S. citizens' identities. This one I can already predict. Well, not really. I can't predict it's going to be a law. I can predict a bill, because we are writing that bill. Myself and Brad Nye, who's our director of consulting services. We're both kind of, everybody here at FRSecure is really driven by this passion that, we hate seeing people getting taken advantage of, whatever we can do to help kind of thing. So this is something that we can do to help. It doesn't take a ton of time, hopefully. I think what you have to do is you have to write the bill. You have to get somebody to kind of sponsor it. So I can't use, who's that one guy? The guy that resigned. Al Francen, I can't use him anymore. He's gone. Klobuchar? Yeah, I don't know. All right, we'll have to find somebody. Because I do want it to be a federal, because I think it works at the federal level. And, you write the bill, and then you got to get a bunch of support for it, right? We've got to get a bunch of people, constituents, and whatever, and, we'll see what happens. But hopefully, I think it is the right thing to do. That way, we already know that Social Security numbers are out there. So enough of the identity theft protection stuff, credit freezes stuff, all it is just Band-Aids on bullet wounds. It's just not, it's so short-sighted. So we really need to kind of fix it fundamentally. And there's only, I think, two primary ways to fix it. One is to just do away with the Social Security number altogether and go with something different, or require that a Social Security number be used in combination with an authenticator. And the authenticator has to be a changeable authenticator, right? Because there's stuff behind that too. So like if I tied authentication to a thumbprint, right, or a fingerprint, what happens if somebody compromises my fingerprint? And that does happen, even though, those systems are only supposed to store minutia, the, characteristics of the fingerprint, not the fingerprint itself, so you can't reconstruct it. It just takes a bad implementation, and that's gone too. So that's 10. What else? Oh, bonus prediction. Oh, a book. Yep. So I was telling this guy, wait, there's questions. Hold on. What is your view on BYOD at this point in time? Are you for or against? I am for BYOD with proper control. So one of the things that we don't do all that well, or at least we've got a bad reputation for doing it poorly, is being the no people with information security. So you've always got these competing interests, right? The business and information security. And really the purpose is for information security to align itself with the business so that we can be the yes people. So if things make the business more money, right, because a business is in business to make money, we need to say yes. However, we also need to manage risk. So BYOD is something that I think can bring legitimate business benefit, right? I can use that to make myself more efficient, potentially, reduce costs, make more money in the end of the day. So then what are the controls? What are the things I'm going to put in place to manage the risks around BYOD, right? And so going back to our definition of what information security is, there's got to be, administrative controls, physical controls, and technical controls wherever, whatever the sufficient controls are for that. An MDM solution, encryption, remote wipe, blah, 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 policy, all that good stuff. Crypto ransom targeting hospitals may well have already caused this. Yeah, good point, Royce. Sad, but probably true. All right, and then the 2018, the last one, the bonus one, I was telling Drew's sitting here. Drew's, what's your official title? Awesome. All right, he's awesome. I like that. That's it. We're gonna get you a name tag. So the bonus 2018, I was down in Mexico, so they sent me away for 2 weeks. They exiled me to Mexico, poor me, right? To write a book. And the book that I'm writing is Fixing the Broken Industry. There's a bunch of stories. Every time you send me anywhere on travel, I end up creating a drama. I'm not a drama guy either. I hate drama. But I go down to Mexico. So here's a story quick. I go down to Mexico. Do we have time? So a little bit. And if anybody has questions while I'm just sitting here talking, type them in and I'll stop and actually answer your question. So I get down to Mexico. I was so proud of myself. I packed like a big boy. I packed everything right. I got Q-tips, fingernail clippers, socks, underwear. I mean, I had everything. I packed it so well. And I get down to Mexico and it's just myself, right? It's me in my room and my computer, and I'm going to write this book. It's got to be like 300 some odd pages, right? I mean, it's a legitimate, like, serious book. And so I actually had a project that I had to work on first, right? I had a bank that I'm doing, just kind of wrapping up a project. And so first things first, I opened my laptop and I started kind of working on that stuff. And then I noticed that my battery was getting low, and I'm like, oh, I got to get my power cord so I can plug it in and get a charge. I forgot my power cord. I'm in Mexico. I'm a son of a gun. All right. So I'm like, all right, well, tomorrow I'll go find a power cord. So somewhere in this town, it's Cancun, right? It's a pretty good sized town. There's got to be a freaking power cord, right? So I get up in the morning, I go down and I talk to the, I figured I'll try something local first because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to go if I don't have to go. So I asked the concierge, I go, does anybody, ever leave behind power cords or anything? I mean, anything I can use here potentially? And I have a Lenovo with it's kind of a rectangular connector. So it's not usual, really. So they did have some. I looked through, didn't have it, right? And I said, okay. So I took the bus, R2. If you've ever been to Cancun, R2 is the bus. 12 pesos, 80 cents. And I found on my phone, I found an Office Depot. I'm like, totally going to win, right? That is a win right there. So I take the bus to the Office Depot. I walk in, found a universal power adapter. It has like 8 power connections on it, but it doesn't have mine. Like, son of a gun. All right. So I get on my phone again, and there's a Walmart like a mile away. I could walk to a Walmart, and plus, if you seen me, I could use the exercise. So I start walking to Walmart. I get there, walk in, same thing. They have the same exact power adapter, not my kind. I'm like, son of a gun. All right. So I Googled the next place. I found another Walmart. I went to 3 Walmarts. I went to 2 Office Depots, 1 Radio Shack. I didn't even know they had Radio Shack anymore, but I went to one. Sanborn's and a couple other places, right? I walked, I got an Apple Watch, and it tells me how far I walked, 9.8 miles. No power cord, right? I got a book to write. Okay, so I called Marla, my assistant, right, on the way home, or way back to the resort. Like, can you just do me a favor, find out how much it costs to FedEx my power cord here, and find out how soon you can get here, right? No, Tuesday. So this was Sunday. So she calls me back, says it's $80. Have it to you Tuesday night. Okay, so I got a couple days. So I started writing my book on my iPhone on Word, right? I got like the first 2 days, I got only 10 pages done. It is a pain in the butt, right? So Tuesday comes. This story's getting long, isn't it? Tuesday comes, and about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I've been watching the tracking, right? Because I cannot wait to get this laptop power cord. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the thing changes and says customs hold, right? A power cord. So I'm like, oh crap, it's not gonna make it here Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Didn't make it there Tuesday at 9 o'clock. So I'm kind of like, oh man, what am I gonna do? Well, it's gotta be released on Wednesday for sure, right? Originally, so when I originally found out I wasn't gonna get the power cord until Tuesday, I was like, well, maybe I'll just buy a computer. Just buy the cheapest computer they possibly have at Office Depot, right? It's like $312. I'm like, I can wait till Tuesday, right? So Tuesday comes, no laptop cord. Wednesday, it's got to be here. Wednesday, nope, still held up on Wednesday. Well, now there's no use in getting me getting the computer because my wife is going to be coming down on Friday, and she can bring a power cord. So anyway, the power cord finally gets released from customs and gets delivered to my resort at like 11:45 in the morning on Friday. My wife is going to be there in 2 hours, right? And then when they delivered it, they wanted to charge me $11 for me to get it. Now $11 extra dollars. So that was just one story. So that was a lost week of that.
Hopefully you're drinking.
I don't drink.
Oh, man.
No, I just
You
sat
sit
there
in
and
the sun?
stewed.
Sit in the
I'm
sun.
not a sun guy either, man. I just wanted to get a damn book done. That's all I wanted to do. All right. So anyway, any questions? Anything? How is the book coming? The book is coming very, very well. So I'll give you an outline of the book real quick. Part 1 of the book is about 5 chapters, and part 1 is really just outlining, all of this. And I go through 6 or 7 stories of that kind of reinforce this passion for really fixing the broken industry. And then part 2 is 10 chapters, and it's 10 things that are broken in our industry. Chapter 1 of part 2 is we're not speaking the same language. And there's a bunch of things there. Chapter 2 is no foundation. So we build security programs without foundation, fundamental things. We focus on these ancillary things that really don't provide value. And if something's insecure at the core, it's insecure throughout. So, and then chapter 3 is lipstick on a pig. There's a lot of that in our industry. What was chapter 4? So I'm writing like chapter 1 of part 3 now. Anyway, so part 2 is the 10 things that are broken, and then part 3, these are the 10 things we need to do collectively in order to fix it. So that's the book. All right. Well, I really appreciate it. Hopefully we get to meet actually in person. This like cyber in-person thing ain't really in person. You guys knew that, right? So hopefully, if you guys make it out to Minnetonka and you want to visit the office, come out. I'll buy lunch. We'll hang out. We'll talk some security and stuff. I apologize, again, for kind of the inconvenience with the Google Hangout thing. This was our first ever attempt at doing this kind of thing. And so we kind of expected some hiccups. That was kind of a major one to find out, it's actually limited to 10 connections, and we had 80 people that signed up. So that messed us up quite a bit. So next time we will have that figured out. So if we have an opportunity to chat again like this, then we should have it without hiccups. So thank you, everybody. I'm out. I got work to do.
All right. Thanks, Evan. Guys, look for an email shortly that will contain the audio and the visual from this Hangout so you guys can watch it again and share it with your friends, as well as a link to provide feedback. Like Evan said, this is our first time doing this, and we really appreciate any criticism or constructive criticism that you guys can provide. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time.